Alright, so today's video comes from a high ticket coach who's absolutely crushing it on delivery. But he's got one big problem. He's leaving a ton of cash on the table because he hasn't got time to follow up. He's constantly signing clients, but also constantly in motion. And this is just because he's knee deep in deliveries, wearing 12 different hats around the business, which means if they close on the first call, great, but the sales calls are becoming a bit of a ball ache for him and he knows he's becoming a bit of a bottleneck in the business. But the most important thing is he's not getting time to follow up on stuff. And it's a fantastic question because it's a question that probably every six-figure coach has to answer at some point. Because if you hire in the wrong way, you're just gonna burn cash. But if you hire too late, you're choking growth. In this video, I'm gonna break down exactly when and how to get your first sales rep in. And just so you know, my name's Adam Davies. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Chief. We're a UK-based agency where we handle recruitment, management, and sales coaching all done for you. If it's something you're kind of struggling with and you're anything like this business owner and you're thinking it might be time to get a salesperson in, if you wanna check out how we can potentially help you, like we've helped many, many others, you can click the link in the description. You can find out a little bit more about how that might work for you. So the first question that normally people ask us is when. I think when you get to that stage and you kind of realize it's a problem, we know that it's now is the right time to be getting somebody in. The only thing that would make sure that you've got in place beforehand is to make sure that your offer is validated, you've got a marketing flow, because the last thing you want to do is bring a salesperson into an unsystemized process, into a hot mess where they're going to come in and they're just going to absolutely struggle from the outset. Because what will happen at that stage, if a salesperson isn't making money and it's a real challenge for them in order to do so, they are just going to leave. So all you're going to do is end up still taking the sales calls, recruiting, then bringing someone in, then wasting leads for you and not getting sales because there's no system or there's no proven system in place. Then you're going to lose them. Then you're going to take the sales calls. Then you're going to do recruitment, and it's just going to go on and on and on and on. So it's really, really important that you're going to get the right people in. B, you've got the right systems in place for them to come into, and C, what they're walking into actually works for them, which I know is easier said than done. So in terms of the systems and stuff that we want to get set up and in place for them, is your marketing flow down and working? So if you've got leads coming in but they're not booking calls, the chances are you're going to want to bring a setter in first to kind of organize that, maybe get calls into your diary so you're only taking qualified closing calls, and then you can then bring yourself out of that. If you're driving which I'm assuming the guy that sent this question in is driving traffic straight into his diary because he's definitely not going to have time to actually ring through leads and stuff. With that, sometimes what can happen is you either overqualify your leads, you end up wasting a shitload of money on your ad spend because you're only speaking to the low-hanging fruit. And if we think about it, there's 20% of people that are going to book a call with you that are borderline ready to buy, which is why it's quite easy to get a 20% conversion rate in sales. Then you're going to have 20% of people that are never in a million years going to work with you. They were tire kickers, they were just funnel hacking, whatever, they're just not your target audience. But then you've got 60% of people in the middle that need a little bit of nurturing. They might just need a little bit of loving and they need an actual good conversation. The problem is when you're doing it the way you're doing there, you're just focusing on that 20% and you're leaving 60% of your ad spend to go with the 20% that was never going to buy anyway, and you're just flushing 80% of your ad spend down the toilet, which is a big, big problem. So what we want to do at that stage is we want to get a system in place where we can have a qualification of the leads, so we've got information on them. We know if we can disqualify them really quickly, we can do so. But then if we get a salesperson in, they can take more of the calls because they're not going to be restricted like you are. You're probably only available to take 2 calls a day. These guys are going to be able to take 7 or 8. So they're going to be able to take a hell of a lot more, which means we can afford to let a little bit more slip through. But the key thing is we take that information and learn from it. So if we're finding a certain lead demographic or a lead source or whatever it may be is coming through and it's not necessarily working, we need to cut that. Because again, a salesperson's just going to be wasting time speaking to the wrong people. Those slots can be available for better qualified people, but this comes with tracking and data. So you need to have that kind of stuff in place. And it all probably sounds really overwhelming. I'm going to have a real subtle plug here about what we do. We simplify all of this stuff. We plug all of our systems in so you don't have to worry about this kind of crap. Because again, it's really difficult, particularly if you're a founder looking to come off the calls. You don't have time to put all of these fucking systems in place. You're trying to manage delivery, delivery, payroll, like debts, bills, everything that comes with bloody running a business. You're trying to manage all of that. The last thing you need to be doing is making sure you've got fucking Google Sheets set up and ready to kind of go. But bringing in a salesperson will require you to have stuff like that in place. So we need to make sure that the marketing works. If you're making calls and you're making or if you're getting deals over the line from the calls that are coming in, your offer is validated. And it's important to understand what those numbers look like, because that gives you a bit of a benchmark. But also, good closers want to know some of those stats. If they back themselves, they want to know that if the director's doing XYZ amount, I can do similar to that as well. So it's making sure that you've got something that can kind of be transferred onto that closer. So once you've got that all in place, it's relatively straightforward then, because now it's just finding the right type of person. The reason so many business owners get this wrong is because they just rush into it. So I talk about this a little bit actually. Daniel Priestley, I saw in a podcast once, he just says that he just hires 4 sales reps. Every time he's looking for one, he'll just hire 4, because he knows 2 of them are going to be complete shit, one's going to be alright, and one's going to be a superstar. Which is fine for Daniel Priestley, because he's probably got the resources, he's probably got ample leads. Way too many leads that he can handle, but also he's got lots and lots of cash flow to back that, because those 2 that do terribly, they're going to cost you opportunity because they're not closing. They're going to cost you the money on the ad spend to get the calls in their diary in the first place. They're going to cost you time with training, making sure that they're up to speed. But what can also happen in that environment, if you don't already have a team of killers in place, is that can kind of create a bad ethos from the start. So even that stud that you've brought in, the one that's absolute killer, is going to see that 3 people are either struggling or just doing okay. It's going to bring them down to their level. So I would not recommend doing that if you're a small business. What we want to do is we want to find somebody that we can bring in, that we can not guarantee they're going to get us results, because we can never ever guarantee that, but we want to make sure we're giving ourselves the best chance. And unfortunately, with that comes time. We need to make sure that we interview quite a lot of people. So to put this into perspective, obviously we do all of this behind the scenes, but we interview, for every one person that we place, we've probably interviewed about 60 people. Because with us, we're building up a rolodex of talent, we're building up a roster. We can look demographically, we can look at what their experience looks like, and we can pick out the right people to then go to interview again specific for that role. So we're doing tons and tons, like literally like 60, 70 first stage interviews, which we actually automate, and they're all done via video. But we do that from the first stage, and then out of those 70, maybe 1 will get placed. Then what we do is we will identify the right type of person, and then we'll interview those. But we still do a good 8 to 10 interviews minimum for each role that we're looking for, because we are looking for the best person for that role. You don't get that just by having that one person, just that, or doing 3 interviews. It just doesn't work. You might get lucky sometimes, but really what you're picking is the best of a bad bunch. That's not scalable. Now, the other mistake that business owners tend to make is they try to look for cheap. So good salespeople want good money, unfortunately. So you've got 2 options with it. You either pay the premium, and most sales reps, and particularly in your space, they want to be commission only. So industry standards around 10%. You're giving away 10% of what they're closing, right? So yeah, if you're closing it, you're not giving away anything. Great, that's money in your pocket, and you're going to save that money. What does that time of you not doing sales calls do for you? What are you using that time for? If you can then work on building the business, growing the business, scaling the business as you want to, having somebody take those calls off your plate is going to be worth more than just giving them 10%, because you're still bringing in the cash, you're still bringing in the sales, but you're giving away, if it's a 10 grand offer, for example, you're giving away £1,000, which sounds like a head of a lot. But in those hours, for those 10 sales that they brought in, or 20 sales that they brought in, that's probably 40 hours per month that you've got back. Like, not only are they making you that money, yeah, it might cost you 10 to 20 grand, but if you can then work on other things that's going to grow and drive your business, that's money well spent. So you've got to start thinking of them as an investment. If you go cheap, the chances are you're going to get somebody who's probably brand new to sales. They need babysitting, they need coaching, and they need teaching. And then what tends to happen is you're not actually getting any time back, you're using more time trying to change them. So depending on your situation, there is going to be cases where new salespeople are going to be quite good. If you've got a setter position, for example, yeah, they can fall into that. But if you've got someone who's brand new to sales, you are not going to want them to go anywhere near your 10K sales. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. Again, there's probably some cases where you might get really lucky, but that's a real big risk. So you can go cheap and you can try and get somebody on like 3, 4, 5%, but you're going to get somebody who's at that level, 30% of what a good closer would be, which means that costs you a hell of a lot more in the long run with marketing. We know marketing's not cheap. To get a good sales call on average, you're talking what, 150, 200 quid? So if you're wasting 10 of those every single time on a bad salesperson, that's costing you 2 grand as it is. Then once they're in, we want to make sure that we're giving them ample to work with. But what I wouldn't do is just go and go, here you go, here's the keys to the kingdom. Here's all of my sales calls. Let you go and do your thing. I'm going to go and work on something else now. Let's say, for example, you've got 5 calls coming in a day. Let them have 2, let them have 3 for a few days, and use the time when they're off call to actually practice and to perfect and get better. So we use our Ask Adam AI software, which we make sure that all of the reps that we're working with, they put all of their calls through for a review, which means that they can identify why that call specifically wasn't a 10 out of 10. Once they see why it wasn't a 10 out of 10, they're good salespeople, they know what they're doing. It's just they forgot certain things or they lacked on certain things. They know they can go away and work on certain stuff. And then when we are doing coaching with them, we know what to work on. I've said a few times in a few different videos before, you've got 2 different types of sales managers. You've got the ones that are completely hands off. Here's some leads, here's a phone, fuck off and go and make me some sales. And then you've got the other guys that are just really breathing down your neck. They're micromanaging and it's really uncomfortable for the salesperson. But then when you go in on training calls, it's like, oh, this week we're going to go through objection handling. These guys know how to handle objections. But what might happen when you identify in the calls what that thing was, that thing that they were lacking in, it might be an objection, but it's a specific part to an objection. You can work on making sure that they get that to a high level and they're super sharp with that. Then it's just a case of getting that to 10 out of 10, then maybe identify next week why they weren't quite a 10 out of 10 that week. It just keeps them at a much, much higher level. Now you're probably thinking that didn't sound simple in any way, shape or form, and it's fucking not. Building a sales team isn't simple. Otherwise, everyone would have killer sales teams and everyone would be doing millions and millions of pounds every single month. It's difficult. There's a lot of people, salespeople are normally quite good at fucking selling themselves, but not necessarily a product. So we need to cut through the crap. We need to find the right people, but we need to give them the best environment to survive, but also to thrive in that situation as well. Hopefully that answered that question. If you're a business owner that's having similar problems, put in the comments some of the problems that you're having. You never know, we might do a video about it as well. But in the meantime, YouTube seems to think that this video is what you should be watching next. So go ahead and do it.